Hi, I'm Lindsay, and today I want to talk to you about the Mandela Effect and how it relates to the Bible. I want to start by giving all praises to the Most High God, whose name is Yahweh. If you receive any understanding from this lesson, be sure to give him thanks because he is the one who gives understanding as well as eyes to see and ears to hear. So, to begin, I want to start off by explaining what the Mandela Effect is for those of you who are unfamiliar with the concept. Basically, it is a worldwide phenomenon of subtle changes to reality that are experienced by some and not others. And these changes really can't be explained by anything within the boundaries of logic or reason, which is why it has become such a popular topic because it's fun to speculate about it. Some examples include the first one I encountered personally was when a coworker told me that the popular children's book series The Berenstain Bears was actually spelled Berenstain, and I had always known it to be spelled Stein, but I went back and looked at all of my old books and everything, and it has, in this reality, so to speak, it's always been spelled Stain, which I considered sort of impossible, but it is what it is. There are actually a lot of media changes pertaining to really popular phrases that stand out in certain movies, like Forrest Gump. He used to say, or the consensus is that he used to say, life is like a box of chocolates, but now he says life was like a box of chocolates. In the Star Wars series, Darth Vader says, "No, I am your father," instead of Luke, "I am your father." Let me think of some other ones. Well, some more major changes, more noticeable. There are changes in human anatomy, actually. Now there are bones in the eye sockets, which is totally new to me personally, not to everyone. Again, these changes aren't experienced by everyone. Men and women have the same number of ribs now. That didn't used to be the case. Men actually did have fewer ribs than women, which supported, the creation story in the Bible of women coming from the rib of a man. So here, that is no longer the case. People have mentioned thumb placements. It used to be very easy to sort of make a fist with your thumb inside of your forefingers, to the point where people would have to point it out that you should keep your thumb outside of your hand when you're punching someone so that you don't break your thumb. But now it's just very awkward to do that, which is strange. The intestines, for example, used to be in a very neat sort of line, and now if you look at human anatomy, they're all jumbled up. One second here. Well, of course, there are some pretty noticeable changes in the Bible, which is most significant to this lesson, of course, because we are talking about the Bible today. But some examples of that include, off the top of my head, just the Lord's Prayer. It used to be, "And forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us." That phrase no longer exists in any translation, and apparently it never has. If you look at any old Bible, it used to be worded that way in the King James Bible. That's not the case anymore. You won't find that phrasing anywhere. But you will see, and it's very strange because you can still see in movies and stuff that people have written, they will write it out that way, but it doesn't exist. So these things still exist in our minds, but in reality, they never existed in this reality that we're in. Some very, very major changes are that pertain to geography. People have said they remembered New Zealand being in a different location, and I personally can remember South America not being so far east. It used to be pretty much directly underneath North America, but now it's like they don't even line up at all. So that's very strange. And as far as astronomy, yeah, so we apparently used to be further out on the edges of the galaxy, I guess you could say, if you believe in that model of the universe. But now we are closer to the center of the galaxy. The planet Earth is, that is. And even if you don't ascribe to that particular model of the universe, everyone agrees that the stars are no longer in the configuration that they used to be. There are even Eskimos and people who sort of rely on the position of the stars for their livelihood, attesting to the fact that the stars have completely rearranged. So those are just some of the examples, some of the more major examples of the Mandela Effect, just to give you an idea of what we're talking about. So next I want to talk briefly about the validity of the so-called Mandela Effect. There is some debate on whether or not it's real, of course, because the things that people are saying have changed. We basically have no way to prove that they were ever any different, because it's essentially like the fabric of reality has just changed, and we can't go back and say, here, look, it was like this before. So yeah, it's been ascribed to just poor memory, but for the scale that it has risen to with the internet now, we have access to other people who experience the same things. So it could have been this way for a very long time, but no one ever spoke about it. But now there has been enough discussion about it to the point where it's just kind of putting your head under a rock to just ignore it and say, oh, you just have a bad memory. So we don't want to, what's the word, discredit or just tell people that whatever they're experiencing is not real, because that can sort of drive people crazy. It's important to address things that people experience, especially as they relate to the Bible, because that's really the only place you can find answers to anything. So let's go ahead and get into it. So just really quickly, I want to mention a few of the existing theories explaining the Mandela Effect, just so you have some frame of reference for what I'm about to go into as it pertains to the Bible. I already mentioned the sort of mass forgetfulness theory is just that people say, well, these changes are so subtle, it's easy for you to just misremember, basically. So there's that. I have heard the strong delusion mentioned, and to be honest, I don't know too much scripturally about the strong delusion, but I have heard some people saying that that the Mandela Effect is possibly the strong delusion, because it is causing a lot of people to question things, especially those in the church, because no one in the church is really taking the time to explain it. So it's it's troubling, basically, for Christians, I think. I've also heard the sort of mass extinction theory that everyone who is experiencing the changes, or just everyone, has all died. It's sort of riding off of the Mayan 2012 theory, where they predicted that the world would end. Some people are saying, well, maybe we actually did all die and we just didn't realize it in 2012, as the Mayans predicted. And also, there is the simulation theory, which honestly, I'm not sure how that explains why the changes occurred, but it explains how, and it's basically just saying, well, if reality can just change like that, then we must be living in a simulation, because it must not be real. Because how can something that has been true for forever just suddenly not be true anymore, and then it's something else? Like, that can only be explained by us living in a simulation. So that is another theory. Okay, so now that we have a pretty good explanation of what the Mandela Effect is, I'd like to get into what the Bible actually says about it. And the Bible does mention it. I haven't seen any theories pertaining to how the Mandela Effect relates to the Bible, but it actually is described. Okay, so first I want to start off with Revelations chapter 6, verses 12 through 14. I'm reading from the King James Version, and it reads, "And I beheld, when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood, and the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. And the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places." So let's focus for a second on verse 14, because I think that this one is most noticeably in sync with what the Mandela Effect is, the changes in geography that are occurring, since it says, "And the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together," which could be seen as a description of the heaven that we once knew, and the placement of the stars being rolled together and departing, because that configuration can no longer be seen in the skies. We have a new configuration now, and every mountain and island removed out of their places is describing the changes in configuration of the continents and islands, the mountains, South America moving farther east, New Zealand moving to some place else. I'm not too familiar with that one, to be honest, because I'm just not very good at geography, basically. But as far as South America, I do very clearly remember it being directly underneath North America, but it has moved out of its place, which is described in this verse. So, okay, so to get into a little more detail, this is really the hardest part to explain, so please bear with me. Backing up to Revelation chapter 6, verse number 13, "And the stars of heaven fell unto earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind." So this verse is essentially describing the falling of a group of people, basically the people who are experiencing the Mandela Effect changes. their fall from heaven to earth, which um, I don't want to get into any kind of sort of big-headed kind of thing, sort of casting people, but so you could really see it as saying that these people are falling from one version of Earth to another, sort of an interdimensional type of thing, if that makes you feel any better, because I'm honestly not certain that everyone who is experiencing the changes can be considered counted among the righteous or not. I do know righteous people who don't experience these changes, so I don't want to go there right now. But I will say that this verse is definitely describing the Mandela Effect and explaining it to you. Essentially, the stars of heaven are people, and John is comparing them to figs on a fig tree that are shaken and fall when the tree is shaken of, and he specifically says, a mighty wind. Okay, and it's easy to miss this because he gives you this image first, and then in the next chapter, the beginning of the next chapter, he starts going into further detail about it, I guess you could say. Let's see, because he says that the four angels were standing on the four corners of the earth. This is chapter 7, verse 1, holding the four winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. And so, it's, what are these four winds, and why are they holding them? They're specifically told to hold them so that the earth or the sea or the trees or anything won't be hurt, because they have to seal the servants of God first. So we know that these winds are something major that will cause a major change. And it can't be a coincidence that he had just mentioned the wind blowing a tree and shaking the figs off of the tree before they fall. So this explanation kind of supports the theory that we all died, and that's why everything changed. Because it says that the earth and the sea and everything would be hurt when these winds were released. So it does kind of sound like a mass extinction event. And in the verses that we didn't cover in chapter 6, verses 15 through 17, now I won't read them, but it basically describes the kings of the earth and everyone basically being afraid of the day of the wrath of the Lamb. So it sounds like they are fearing for their lives because it is a very dangerous day. So it is very possible that that we all died, but we are still here and alive and conscious. Okay, and before I move on to the conclusion, I just want to cite some verses that support the notion that the stars mentioned in Revelation chapter 6, verse 13 are actually referring to people, because this is not an isolated event in the scriptures of people being referred to as stars. For example, in Revelations, sorry, I keep saying I keep wanting to say Revelations because that is one of the Mandela Effect changes. But in Revelation chapter 9, verses 1 through 2, it reads, "And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth. And to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit." Okay, so this verse is referring to a person. It has to be a person because it says that he was given something. He was given the key, and he used that key to open the pit. So this is the work of an entity, some kind of living person who can do things. And it very clearly refers to him as a star who fell from heaven. So whoever this person is, it could be that he fell with everyone else who was mentioned in chapter 6, verse 13. We don't know when he fell. John mentions him alone falling, so it could have been a separate event. But we do know that he is a person, and he's referred to as a star. And then there is one other verse I want to mention. It's Daniel chapter 12, verse number 3. And it reads, "And they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever." So John is not the only person to refer to people as stars. Daniel also said that those who turn many to righteousness shine as the brightness of the firmament and as stars. So it is not completely outlandish or anything like that to interpret Revelation chapter 6, verse 13 as referring to people falling from heaven to earth. And that essentially is my explanation, my interpretation anyway, of what the Bible says about the Mandela Effect. It is real, and it is mentioned, and it is the effect of the sixth seal being opened. So you know that this is a sign of the end of days, that we are in the end of days. Things are getting pretty chaotic right now. I think most people recognize that, and we're just sort of looking for answers, trying to understand what is going on. But I just want to tell you not to be afraid. Just because things are getting crazy and the end is on its way, I mean, it's a good thing, because Christ, the Son of God, Yahweh Shai, he's coming back, and he's bringing his kingdom with him, and that kingdom will be one of life and of righteousness and peace. So there's no reason to be afraid. Just try to keep the commandments of God, which includes keeping the Sabbath day and his holy days, and avoiding unclean foods, as well as keeping the faith in Christ, whose real name is Yahweh Shai, and you'll be fine. Revelations mentions that the seed of the woman, as opposed to the seed of Satan, those are the only two options. But the seed of the woman, the saints, will keep the commandments of God as well as the faith of Christ. So if you just do those two simple things, everything will be fine. There's no reason to be afraid. If you all have any questions about the Mandela Effect, or really just anything, feel free to leave comments. Again, I hope that you were able to gain some understanding from this video. All praises go to Yahweh. Be sure to share it with others if you found it helpful. Like it so that it can reach more people who are searching for answers. Be blessed, and thank you for watching.